When they first invaded in early 2022, I remember watching Gonzalo Lero talk about this. He was like, yeah, they're gonna win, etc. They're winning. And he was getting shadow banned. The American media wasn't reporting it because they didn't want the American public to know that, look, we're funding this war and we're fucking losing. It took years for the American public to finally figure out they're losing.
I'm willing to have a nuanced conversation about how long we should be willing to do this, how inevitable is it, but that point's not true at all. The overwhelming mainstream media consensus was that if Russia invades, it's all over, and then it was like, whoa, Ukraine, now years they've been
but they were holding back the figures and not being honest about them losing.
Ukraine lost.
I mean, they didn't, but
they did. Do you see the map in front of you?
Look at how much of Ukraine is not taken.
Look at all that non-red Ukraine.
The objective wasn't to take Ukraine, though. That wasn't
right.
What was Russia's stated objective?
So if all they're interested in is the eastern portion,
it's the land bridge to Crimea.
They've been there.
They've taken it.
They've taken it.
Right.
So
we're not. What? Of course.
That was their purpose.
Of course.
That was their purpose.
I'm shocked
to protect the ethnic Russians.
The Russian objective was attained a couple of years ago.
I don't know how
why
that
is there still
at all
fight?
relates to what we're saying.
Again,
because they can take more.
Wait. Why is there still fighting if they achieve their
because
objective?
Ukraine wants the land.
Right, and as long as they do,
and the U.S.
we
is
just have to
providing
give
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That then you can't. I take your point that they have the land seizures that they sought, but it's clearly not secure. There's a reason the conflict's still going on. Russia is suffering casualties from.
Let's clarify.
From Ukrainian resistance.
Yes, Russia has secured its objective and is now seeking to defend its position.
I still don't know if secure, because again, it doesn't seem particularly secure. But
no. This map shows that Russia has taken control of the Donbass region.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're saying, look, it's not secure if they're still fighting a war of it. That's a fair point.
What I mean to say is, they are in control of this territory as per the battle maps that are presented by the BBC and by Arcus.
No, we agree with that.
And so, of course, if the U.S. wasn't supporting Ukraine, the war would be over.
Yes,
that I disagree with.
Well, I mean, they would still be resisting, but I think the resistance would be, based on my limited understanding, minuscule in comparison.
Yeah, they don't have the weapons.
They wouldn't be able to do anything. You know what I mean?
But they would. I think they're also receiving. Aren't they receiving even more from European allies?
Yeah.
Like, again, this is where
they get a lot of aid. Yeah.
Yeah, even outside the United States, my understanding is they're getting a lot of shit from the United Kingdom, the European Union,
everywhere.
And, yeah.
Sure.
So
because if those other countries, like if Ukraine sees this as an ultimate, fight to the death for their homeland, and then other European countries feel threatened by Russia doing this, and they're going to be supporting Ukraine somewhat already, and Ukraine's going to be fighting, regardless of if we send aid, I'd rather them have our aid and do more damage to Russia and maybe hold back some Russian aggression further than standing back and Ukraine gets even further.
Yeah, so basically that's a very bloodthirsty position for a progressive, isn't it? So
yeah,
the idea here is I want American funding to go to Ukraine so that they can spend their soldiers, right, in what looks to be a fairly fruitless battle long term to get slaughtered over and over and over again so that you may not have to deal with the Ruskies later. And it's like, here's the thing. You're going to have to deal with them later, and here's why. They're a nuclear-armed nation. Did you forget about that part?
Yeah.
They have nuclear bombs and intercontinental ballistic missiles. And it's like, you're going to have to deal with them, whether you like it or not. This idea of the ground pounders in Ukraine who are battling it out in the trenches, all of that is actually beside the point. They're a nuclear-armed nation capable of intercontinental ballistic missile technology. It's
exactly,
like
which
you're
is
going to
why
have to
we
deal with
can't directly involve ourselves militarily with them because it would be nuclear war. But
right, so spend other people's sons.
You're saying bloodthirsty. My point is, as long as Ukraine would be fighting, our aid can prevent more deaths.
Just
how?
No, it actually
how is our aid preventing more deaths?
Defend themselves more effectively.
Our aid is the reason why they even go. Why they're fighting.
Like when they have certain equipment that allows them to not even have to send troops, like whatever Biden recently sort of sent.
Let's clarify something. It was the U.S. that sunk the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. You can say Ukraine pulled the trigger, but Russia doesn't see it that way. It can be the perspective of the narrative in the United States that the U.S. is not involved. Russia does not see it that way. The U.S. provided missiles like ATACMS, provided the training and the equipment, and then asked the guy standing next to them, special forces in Ukraine, press that button to blow up the Russian flagship. Russia doesn't see that as Ukrainian attacking.
I don't.
Well, they do because they're not attacking. They're not like
Russian
Russian
state officials and media have already said we are at war with NATO.
Yeah, I mean, they always believe that. But I agree, they do believe that I agree with all that. I just don't think.
Right, so let's put
that
it
means
simply.
that we're actually going to get into a military conflict with.
In no courtroom would you be able to claim that you were not involved in the murder of a person when you handed the gun to the guy, asked him to do it, and told him to pull the trigger?
And we gave him the equipment. Of course, I'm with you.
So that means the U.S. is literally at war with Russia.
And then I disagree that we technically are neither.
Yeah,
We're not legally at war with Russia because Congress hasn't declared.
Yeah, we weren't legally at war with Vietnam either. It was a police action.
Well,
There was no
and we don't feel
declaration of
threatened
war.
that we're going to have to sacrifice American soldiers to invade Russia, or Russia's going to do that to us. There's not really a threat.
First of all, Luke, I think it's very naive on your part to pretend that there's not American special forces who are in Ukraine right now doing all sorts of sabotage mission, training ops, all sorts of things. Like, it's totally naive to believe that in every other theater, that we're involved in, where we're training people in advisory roles.
I think you think you're debating with someone else.
We're always.
That's not what I'm claiming.
Well, you say you make the claim like no boots on the ground, no boots on the. It's like there's already boots on the ground though. We already have. I guarantee we already have special forces boots on the ground.
If you don't hear what I'm saying, then
Look, I think foreign wars in general are a big waste of money. It's not a W for us. It's an L. Let's just be honest here. This whole situation with Russia and aggression, containing it, it's to fund the military-industrial complex. We need to be able to rationalize and justify our armament. So we need to go ahead and have this conflict with Russia, when in reality we need to figure out some type of diplomatic middle ground with them versus having an issue with a nuclear-armed superpower.
Capable.
I think peace is the way to go, but we want to sit here and substantiate our military-industrial complex, which is problematic.
Okay, Russia, it's so strange. Russia was the one who violated peace. We had peace, and then Russia made it no longer peace, and then they were fighting, and we went, I mean, a little bit before.
We've been promising not to expand NATO for decades, and we keep doing it.
Actually, we never formally promised that, but
Formally.
yeah, yeah.
It was a memo. It wasn't a treaty.
Yeah.
number one, but number two, like, was that?
Anyone
we
can be
didn't
NATO.
invite Ukraine into NATO. Is that what you guys talked about? Like, there was no offer.
Before they invaded, Ukraine specifically said, we're not going to be we're not entering NATO, and the United States was like, yeah, it's not happening, and Russia still invaded.
It is not.
Let's clarify. The issue wasn't NATO. The issue was the European Union. And so Vladimir Putin went to Ukraine and said, if you open up your borders to trade with Europe, and we have open borders with you, European goods will flood into Russia and it'll destabilize our economy. So you have to choose either Europe or Russia. The issue was Ukraine largely was like, you mean we get access to the Schengen zone and European trade, but we lose Russia? Russia got pissed and said, no, hold on. We need Sevastopol. We need Crimea. We can't lose that to the West. Now you can make the arguments about what you think happened with the ousting of Yanukovych. A lot of people believe that it was U.S. aid and the CIA that went in to help foment these groups that ultimately stormed his mansion and ousted the guy, forced him to flee to Russia. But this bubbling conflict in the country and political destabilization was definitely both Russia and NATO, Western forces, vying through political means to gain control of Ukraine. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that all that dynamic is very important, and I don't think Russia should have a say in.
So it's not like they just invaded out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I think it's important to understand, like,
what?
Yeah, that is. It's what you were just like. You kind of just back off immediately on your own position right away.
You clearly don't even know what my own position is. I'm saying all of those things contribute. That doesn't make it justified. Someone can be.
No, you said there was peace, and then Russia violated it, and then backed off in the position the second it was clarified by Tim.
Wait. Hold on.
But
what are you talking about?
I don't think that was a contradiction.
That was
you could say
okay.
You could say that
our position. I think me and Andrew's position is. We need to stop sending aid to Ukraine and end this.
Yeah, we got your position.
That's our
position. You
position.
can violate peace for a reason. He had a reason. I just don't think it's a justified reason. We shouldn't have started a war over it.
Let's ask the simple question.
Can you acknowledge there's a difference between what you just said, Andrew?
No. Your implication was everyone was minding their own business and getting along fine, and then the Russians moved into the Ukraine, right?
Everything was perfect.
Let's ask the question that Myron brought up. Should we cut off the aid and just say no more involvement in Ukraine?
Zero.
No, I don't think so.
I think end all aid, stop it, and end the fight now. Like, we need to end it now.
If Ukraine wanted to end the fight, then we could figure out what.
Who cares?
We're not at the mercy.
Hold on. Let me say this.
They're the ones fighting. We're not going to start.
If we're funding the conflict, we're giving them all the aid. We dictate what happens. I find it interesting how we let these other countries like Ukraine dictate our foreign policy. We give you the money. We tell you what it is. Fuck that.
It's not true. Ukraine would, or we
tell Zelensky, hey, dumbass, we put you in power. You do what we say.
I just want to let me ask you these questions. This question.
Wild.
What is the strategic, economic, or otherwise benefit of our involvement in Ukraine?
My understanding is
zero.
That
But go ahead.
Fuck you.
Yeah. 0-8.
But also,
Zero
fuck
eight.
you, no.
Zero benefit.
My
The
understanding.
best answer of the debate so far.
Fuck you or zero. My understanding is, this should not be the primary motivator, and I'm not sure that it is. But if you take just morality out of the equation, looking at Russia as a geopolitical rival, they have been weakened as a consequence of this. Now, you can say that they're going to win, and certainly they have still the stronger military, but they are not in a better position now than they were prior to the war, number one. Number two, we consider Ukraine an ally. We consider them somebody that, we have diplomatic and economic incentives for them to succeed. Also, by definition, the European Union as well. So it seems like we have diplomatic and economic reasons and to try to weaken Russia, number one. Yes. But I just want to be clear, at least for me, and I'm sure Luke would agree, if Ukraine did not want to fight, like, I don't think we should be forcing or coercing Ukraine to fight. If they decide, like, you know what, fuck it, we've resisted, let's have either a settlement or just wave the white flag all the way around. I mean, I think it would suck that we were empowering and rewarding Putin, but like at that point, yes, the aid should be cut off. But my understanding is they still want to fight and they just need help. So
who is they though?
Ukrainian people, right? Isn't there in the Ukrainian government?
Zelensky wants to fight.
Well, I believe that largely the population has either resisted conscription or fled the country.
Yeah,
not the majority. I'm saying, but
I'm sure there's people doing that. Yeah,
I mean, they're drafting women and elderly.
They're not.
So I don't think
pull a
people want to
polling.
fight.
I'm sorry.
I'm
You're
curious.
right. To be clear, I'm sure the number of people who want to pick up a gun and fight Russian soldiers, I'm sure that number.
And that's
has
what matters.
diminished.
Not the puppet that we put in place.
No. I
not
agree
even-
it's
not even
just
Zelensky.
Let's not even
It's
call it
public
puppet. Let's just say
opinion.
the
Public opinion.
government of a small group of people. Do you guys believe that the small government, this limited amount of people, have a right to force the people of Ukraine through conscription to go fight a war?
No, I'm saying. Well, I mean, yeah. If they have drafts, they could probably draft people. Yeah.
So the question then becomes, when you say
I'm
Ukraine
saying-
wants to fight, you're talking
No.
about the
That's what I was about to
oligarchs and the
specify.
politicians,
That's what I
not
was
the
about to
people.
specify. Yeah, I was about to
Well,
specify.
what they're
No.
actually
Wait. Just let me specify. If public opinion
real
was
quick.
against it, I would say, well, they
And it's an important
democratically
thing.
should listen to the public opinion.
The government of Ukraine has largely been described for decades as an oligarchy. You guys know how the oligarchy formed?
and
in Ukraine?
corrupt, super corrupt.
Let me answer your question.
I'm
You
making
asked the question.
Sure. I'm making a point about the structure of the government. That's why I asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
After the fall of the Soviet Union, the general story is that you've got these Soviet factories, for instance. They run up the chain of command through the Communist Party. That's how the Soviet Union ran. When the Soviet Union collapses and Ukraine effectively becomes its own state, where does this factory answer to now that the party has been shattered? What happens was, there's one story of a guy, one of the oligarchs, got a couple of his buddies with some guns, walked into the factory and said, "Who's in charge?" And I'm the foreman. And they say, "Okay, we're going to take care of everything for you. We're the bosses. This is our factory now." And they say, "Well, what does that mean?" It means all the supplies you need to come in and make the factory work, we will take care of, but you answer to me. And the worker said, "That sounds great to us, actually, because we don't know who we're supposed to answer to." This created a massive wealth gap in Ukraine for decades, where you had a very small group of ultra-wealthy individuals. One of the most interesting things I found about Kiev is that the price of a condo or a house was comparable to a house or a condo in the United States, despite the fact that these people were making about $400 a month. So with the government being largely oligarchic, the question of whether or not Ukraine wants to fight this war is an interesting one, and I'm curious what you guys think.
Yes. So back to just public opinion. If there was an overwhelming opposition within Ukraine among Ukrainian citizens for continuing this war, then I think that they should resolve it because democracy.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, this is not something I focus on my channel. So for all I know, there's compelling evidence that the public sentiment is, fuck it, let's just, again, either negotiated settlement or concede the land.
Wow, 25% of the population has been displaced, with 7 million as refugees fleeing the country.
Yeah, man.
By the way,
they don't want the war.
another
Again, it's
issue.
American media that controls it. Like, yeah, we're going to go out and fight this war. We got Zelensky, and who's obviously like a puppet of the United States. It's the United States saying we need to weaken Russia at any cost. If it means Ukrainians die and we spend a bunch of money, we're going to do it. The people don't want the
This
war.
brings
Yeah,
up
so it
this
looks
brings
like-
up a more compelling question I'd like you to answer to, though, Luke, which is this:
Wow.
Do you think ultimately that Russia likely is going to win the conflict with Ukraine and get at least a large portion of Ukrainian land? Do you think ultimately that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Then the entailment actually of your position is this: when you say weaken Russia, that you want the United States to fund an oligarchical government which will continue to draft the citizenry of the Ukraine to go die to weaken people you don't like.
Exactly.
That is the action. Hang on. I just want to make sure. What did I just say there that's incorrect?
All of it.
Okay, which thing?
Yeah. So I keep saying, and as I'm pulling up polling myself, it's been pretty quickly dropping year by year, public support for this. And so as we get less and less support among Ukraine, because I'm not saying they should die for us if they don't want to. And as more
None
people
of them want to die for us, bro. Nobody wants to die for us.
some of them are willing to die for their own country. And I'm saying
Their country,
if
yes.
they're doing
At
it
least
for
not 10 million of them.
if they're
quarter of the country.
well,
isn't.
part of that's
I'm sorry. Yeah, but
moving out,
that's what he meant. Like he's saying
But
that
you're
this,
saying you want American treasure to prop this up in order to assist these war fighters for your interest to go die on behalf of an oligarchical nation, which is
Russia?
drafting their own citizenry. You want to pay for that because it weakens a geopolitical rival of
I
yours.
think you correct me if I'm wrong, because I know this is my position. I think the position is we should be continuing to support an ally as long as they want to resist an invader, a foreign invader, which incidentally also benefits us directly because it weakens a foreign adversary, that same invader. For me, the calculus changes tremendously if it turns out that, that Zelensky is forcing the Ukrainian people to resist. Like they don't want to resist.
He is, and that's our
no,
point.
he's I understand that he is drafting people.
Yeah, what's a draft?
He's kidnapping them. He's literally kidnapping of age men and taking them and forcing them to be in the military.
There are people who are trying to leave as refugees who are grabbed and then dragged back kicking and screaming.
The people don't want this, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So then we would.
There's videos of this stuff.
Well, no.
So we agree then.
You see the videos of the women being captured
beginning.
too? It's nuts.
But
You guys are
let's just
saying-
start with the fundamental question. What is a draft?
You are taking of age people and forcing
Compelling
them, against their
them
will.
into
You're
service.
compelling them, yes, to fight.
Yeah, so the thing
Yeah.
is like when you say, if it turns out this government is forcing people, like, what are you talking about? The entailment immediately of I'm drafting your ass is that you're being forced to go fight when ordinarily you wouldn't. Why wouldn't you just have a volunteer armed forces instead of a draft? Because you're compelling a populace or a group of people who doesn't want to fight to go do it anyway.
No, I understand. So let me ask you if you recognize any distinction between this, because perhaps this is a distinction without a difference. Do you recognize that there are people who do not want Russia to conquer Ukrainian territory or Ukraine writ large, but are not prepared to pick up a gun and voluntarily attack?
Of course, sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Is that a distinction worth noting? Because what I'm referring to is the former, not the latter. I totally concede that based on reports, there's been drafts and conscriptions for months.
No.
Years? Okay. But that my understanding is that the public sentiment of the people in Ukraine is that they don't want Russia to take this territory. If that's wrong, then my interest in funding the war or whatever it is, or propping up Ukrainian resistance to Russia, plummets dramatically.
But wait a second. What you're talking about here it still brings up another question, which is, let's just say it's like 55% or 60% of the nation, right, who wants this war, right? They want to keep they want to keep themselves sovereign.
Yeah.
Let's just say that that's all the public
Like a small
sentiment.
majority, or like
a small majority or whatever. They can institute a draft against the minority who can fight, which is going to be kids, mostly young men, right? That's going to be your warfighter age, 18 to 25. Obviously, they're going to be outnumbered by other people, so they can compel their citizenry to go fight, because they don't have to, right? But ordinarily, they would not be able to do this, nor do this compelling service, unless they were enabled by the treasury of a large first world nation, which is supporting it. So it seems like you have a moral quagmire here, a big problem.
Oh, there is. Like
A big problem on your end of thinking that, hey, we can use this as a buffer against our geopolitical enemy, regardless of who it
I think
kills.
it's also very important to know Eastern Ukraine is ethnic Russian mostly, and a lot of them do want to be a part of Russia.
So I do want to move on unless you want to make a quick final point, guys.
Sure, we could talk Israel.
No, I think as far as
Israel.
Again,
do
I'll
it.
totally concede that this is a very morally ambiguous conflict. That you pointed out that even if a majority of Ukrainian citizens want to resist Russia in the sense that they don't want Russia to come take over,
They're not the ones fighting.
I think any draft or conscription, at the bare minimum, and I'm not a debate philosopher like you are, so but is morally ambiguous to say the least.
60 years old.
I just think that my understanding is Ukraine wants to resist Russia, and I don't have any issue with the United States continuing to supply the means by which.
So let's move.
If the premise,
I'll wrap it.
If the premise is wrong, I would be happy to revisit.
Let's talk about.
My closing is not controversial. Another reason I agree. public support is dropping. It's kind of complicated for what they support, what type of peace deal they support, what's being taken, all that. And I have the same stances from when we started based on public sentiment. And I understand what you're saying. I'll note that I also think for leverage to get a better deal for Ukraine, it's important that the United States stands like we're going to support them in, to infinity and beyond, so that Russia doesn't feel like, wait, if we just wait out American support for Ukraine, we can take even more, right? So that they believe, gosh, we're stopping up at this line. Okay,